ready as we're gonna be.
Hey, you're right. We are as ready as we're going to be. They heard that.
It's been a long week, guys.
Yeah, it has. For everybody, it's been a long week. Come on, man. What's going on? What's wrong with your life over there?
Nothing really is wrong. It's just, it just feels like this year. I mean, both of us are in jobs that are way more demanding. I mean, you're trying to run a town of 6,000 or 7,000 people. I've got five. Okay, sorry. And dealing with elections and budgets and just say disagreements between certain individuals in your area about how they think things should be versus what maybe they are and are going to be.
I'll tell you a story.
And then I've got these
story.
Okay.
This morning, I'm going to go back to that in a second. I want to see what else is going on at your end. But I get in my car after getting my coffee. I'm setting up the show, as I always do, way too early in the morning. Have my coffee, get into the car. There's an article about something in my village going on in the newspaper today. And I have the talk radio station on that will normally hit it. I get in my car, and the host is literally talking about me as I'm getting in the car on the radio. I'm like, oh, God. And he's like texting me to call his show. So I'm driving here to get this show ready, and I'm on a talk radio show locally about politics, all trying to get myself, ready for this thing that we're doing here. This is where chaos just ensues in every possible way. So, okay, your life, your job, go.
I as everyone may or may not know, I worked in banking for about 18 years, and then a couple years ago, I thought it would be a bright idea to jump back into something that I did in my mid-20s, which is executive search. I recruit people for banks, basically, and it's a sales job, and I have certain metrics and quotas now that I didn't carry before. So the economy has been a little wonky, and yet we get constant reminders from our management like, hey, our numbers are down, what are you doing to sell more stuff? And I'm just out there working the phones and just trying to make things happen. It's just a very different reality. And my wife is starting her own business. She's signing leases, and so we're just kind of crazy around here. We don't have as many kids to herd and to get to different places. They're all off in college for the most part, with the exception of my son, the youngest. But it's just it's funny. I thought that maybe things would calm down once we became mostly empty nesters, but it's been the exact opposite.
Well, I applaud you for having the family aspect of it, because my family obviously is my parents, my sister, etc., and they're of the older group. So look, this has been an interesting season for us. In fact, we've gotten to episode 26 episodes here.
Really, 26?
Incredible.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, listen, we do have to be serious here before we get into the intro. Today would be the 18th birthday of Mikey Weinstein, correct? And why don't you tell the folks more?
Yep. Yeah, and if you've ever been to our Facebook homepage, this is the kind of the cover photo, the backsplash. Mikey Weinstein was a boy from Rockaway who unfortunately got diagnosed with pediatric cancer and passed away. Was it 2015 now? It's been somebody who we got to know through the Merchant Marine Academy and Coach Toop. You've seen there, and that great photo. They adopted him, quote unquote, through the Friends of Jacqueline program, which matches up children fighting cancer with local sports teams. We've seen similar types of things with like Team Impact in New England. It's a really great program. But it was just really sad that Mikey's time on Earth was cut so short. I got to see him about 3 months before he passed away. I actually drove down to the kind of Make-A-Wish Center here in the Orlando area as part of Disney and spent my birthday with him, kind of going on the rides and visiting with his family. And then unfortunately he passed about 3 months later in May. And it was just a lovely family, and my heart breaks that he could be a high school senior or a freshman in college by now and doing kind of getting his adult life started, but it was just cut too short. And We just send our thoughts and prayers to the Weinstein family, and he's been a big part of this show over the last 15 years. He used to listen to us when we were on internet radio, and he liked James and Frank. We always would joke around about that, and when I got to meet him, we had a blast. I got to hang out with him a couple times over the years when they would come visit, and he always talked about wanting Coach Toop to cut the mustache.
Good luck with that.
But yeah, that's But anyway, yeah.
Well, listen, F cancer, and let's go to our 26th episode here of season 16
26.
of In the Huddle as we preview the quarterfinals after talking about week 13. 30,000-foot view is something we did not get from you last week due to your technical difficulties. Fly that airplane right into our homes here of information about week 13, round 2 of the playoffs, JB. It was one for the history books, I would say. Go for it.
Yeah, it was. There was a historic upset with Alma beating Mount Union with 24 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Nobody saw that coming. It was definitely one of the bigger wins in recent playoff history, particularly for a program out of the MIAA, which is not really as highly regarded as some of the other conferences in D3, especially when it comes down to the Elite Eight. But the Scots are having a heck of a year. They've got a heck of a quarterback in Carter St. John. And in a little while, we'll get to these some slides here, the tail of the tape that we do every year. And there you'll see there's some common denominators across these 8 teams. If you want to get to this far in the tournament, that you're going to have. And a QB like Carter St. John is one of them. The other thing, we saw some other games looking like there might be some potential upsets, but otherwise sort of chalk reigned. All the teams that we thought would win did, so there weren't any surprises there. I did get a little frustrated, Frank, when I tried to comment on, even though I kind of saw it coming on one hand, I thought that, the way certain fans, sort of handled some of the wins and all that, like I tried to, say something nice on behalf of guys like Tucker Horn and Braxton Plunk, who are 2 of the best quarterbacks that I've seen in the last 15 seasons that I've ever, maybe even if you go back to 30 years I've been covering D3 football, they've been outstanding. And I just got peppered with, well, so-and-so is better than both of them combined, and this guy is better than these. Like, that's not the point. And I'm getting sick and tired of fans that are looking to just rain on the parades of these, all-time great, all-American kind of players just because they think the guy from their team. Come on. D3 is supposed to be the purest form of the sport. Let's act like it, And so, unfortunately, I had a little bit of a tirade earlier on in the week. I just couldn't take it anymore with some of the really low class kind of chest beating that I saw from certain Twitter trolls and all that. I think we kind of paved that over and we're good now, hopefully. But I for some reason I lost it. So that was part of my 30,000-foot experience, because things were going well. I thought with these playoffs things were, I think we've only missed one game so far, which was that Alma upset between you and me. I guess I've missed 2 because you called the Grove City win in round 2, but that kind of was disappointing. I thought we were on a different playing field there, and hopefully we'll just move past that and see what happens in the next couple rounds.
Well, look, we had some good discourse about Caleb Parmel, for instance, though, and folks agree with the fact that he is of a quality that might be next-level quality, and, some discussed his size, questions and whatnot, and, you learn a lot as you go into those questions, because I didn't know what the average size of a linebacker in the NFL was, but he actually fits somewhere inside the range, not necessarily the best fit in that, but what he's got in skill and everything else, it's amazing. And so we'll see what he's able to do. I know he's got intent to see what's out there for the next level, and we wish him the best on that. Tucker Horn as well. But there's a lot of players. And the blessing we have here on this show right now is that we, by expanding the show, have gotten to a point where we are able to help identify talent that is beyond what we are normally seeing in Division III over our years here, and interacting with those people, and to be able to say, hey, see him maybe in the pros at some point is a blessing truly, because there aren't many players in Division III that you can say that about, and here we are identifying people with these attributes that you just can't believe. I mean, Ben Thorson threw only 2 interceptions all season. Tucker Horn threw 3 interceptions all season, all in one game, which was last week. Luke Lanin is special. He's going to be playing baseball professionally or football professionally. I don't know which, but he's going to be doing something professionally with sports. He's got to be at the end of the day. Caleb Harmel. I mean, those are just a few of, several that actually this year, because of the fifth-year senior scenario, I think we have a bigger pool of possibilities than we've ever had. So keep that in mind. JB, we're going to do it live again here, so get ready for me to flub it up. Do it live! As we always say. We're doing it live. It's time for crunch time to go through the second round of the playoffs. That's week 13 of the 2023 Division III college football season. And we're going to start here with Aurora visiting UWL. 3:08 left first quarter. It's Jaquay Cretin getting a 1-yard touchdown run. Aurora took a 14-0 lead to start this game. Then in the second quarter, 9:22 left in that second quarter, Jack Struder gets an 82-yard touchdown. Ultimately shaking that tackle there from Kaiser Helterbrand to make it 21-14 Lacrosse. So 21 straight points for Lacrosse to take the lead in the game. Second quarter again, 5:34 remaining. Still Aurora fighting back in this game as Michael Bolin gets a 16-yard touchdown pass from Taylor Adkins. And you can see it here to make it 21 apiece in this game. We'll go to halftime at 28-21, UWL. Third quarter, 13:01 left. In Lacrosse's Wyatt Lemoyne, a 42-yard touchdown pass from Kaiser Helterbrand gave the Lacrosse team a 35-21 lead. And still, Aurora had a chance here. 3 minutes later, you'll hear from Michael Bolin again. This time a 17-yard touchdown pass from Tyler Atkins, who you got to give credit to the way that he was able to pick up the pieces due to the injury from the original starter. Trucking away there at 35-28 and gave his team an opportunity, but fourth quarter, 13:41 left. Ryan Bartol, a 24-yard touchdown pass from Kaiser Helterbrand. That would do it. 56-35 was the final score as Aurora led 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. Kaiser Helterbrand, 399 total yards, 5 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the game. But, I mean, my goodness, look, Aurora, we thought they were pretty much dead when that injury occurred, and they almost pulled it off. Trinity at North Central, well, we're just going to tell you about the first half here. First, it's Joe Sacco with a 6-yard touchdown run a couple minutes into the game. Then tragedy struck. We won't show it here, but Trinity loses the ensuing kickoff, fumbles it away. So you're going to feel like deja vu as I tell you, Joe Sacco, 20 seconds later, gets an 18-yard touchdown run to make it 14-0, North Central leading the game. 3 minutes later from there, Colmanego gets a 7-yard touchdown pass from Tucker Horn. As Trinity tries to trim the lead down, it's 14-7. You got the foot in, as you can see there, just barely, but it counts, and 14-7 was the score. Then a little bit more of a prolonged drive for Trinity came up. 4 minutes later, it would conclude with Caleb Crawford. He gets a 13-yard touchdown pass from Tucker Horn to tie the game at 14 apiece. That was pretty much all that we would really talk about Trinity having a chance in this game, because here, Sean Allen, a 26-yard touchdown run for North Central. 1:42 left first quarter, made it 20-14. And then after another turnover, North Central's Charles Coleman gets a 58-yard touchdown pass. Luke Lanin to Coleman here, making it 27-14. That was the first quarter scoring, 41 points in the first quarter. Second quarter, I just told you about Charles Coleman. Let me tell you about him again as he gets the 1-yard touchdown run to give his team a 34-14 lead in this game, as he did find the end zone across that goal line on that play. And then finally, 24 seconds left in the first half, Joey Lombardi, a 38-yard touchdown pass from Luke Lanin. That clearly would be all they would need, as they would win this game 71-28. My goodness, a basketball score here, as Tucker Horn for Trinity had 30 for 50, 278 yards, 4 touchdowns in the air, but 3 interceptions. The offense for North Central, 536 total yards, 9 touchdowns on the day. Whitworth at Wartburg. We're going to see here 2:46 left, first quarter. Dylan Cook, a 2-yard touchdown pass from Austin Ewing. Didn't tie the game, but it made it 7-6 because of the extra point being missed. Second quarter, though, Wartburg would finally respond in earnest as Hunter Clausen, Turbo, gets the 8-yard touchdown run with 8:28 left to make it 14-6 in favor of Wartburg. 5:09 left, so about 3 minutes and 19 seconds later, Thomas Butters, you'll see coming up here, gets a 7-yard touchdown pass from Niall McLaughlin and just barely gets his foot in, but it is good for the touchdown. That made it 21-6 in favor of Wartburg. Then you're going to see a pair of touchdowns to the same player. At the very end of the first half, 0 on the clock, in fact, Drake George gets a 3-yard touchdown pass from Niall McLaughlin to make it 28-6 in favor of Wartburg. And then a minute 16 into the third quarter, back-to-back basically here, as Drake George gets a 73-yard touchdown pass this time once we get this play underway from Niall McLaughlin. And as we have the break here, I'm going to tell you that Wartburg just seems to be getting better and better this season offensively. They struggled earlier in the season, and you see that play there. 42-20 would be the final score in favor of Wartburg, as Niall McLaughlin goes 25 for 31, 352 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. The Wartburg defense held Whitworth to 7 rushing yards. It had an interception, a sack, and 5 tackles for loss on the day. Wheaton at Whitewater, a lot of clips here because this is one of the best games of the late portion of the day. Second quarter, 6:54 left. Seth Kortenhoven, an 18-yard touchdown pass from Ben Thorson, makes it 28-14 in favor of Wheaton, but Whitewater would rally back. Third quarter, a minute 3 into it, it's Tommy Coates getting a 50-yard touchdown pass from Alec Ogden, former guest of the show, to make it 28-21, still in favor of Wheaton. But then you're going to see the Tamir Thomas show start up here. Third quarter, 6:26 left. It's a 4-yard touchdown pass to Tamir Thomas to tie the game, 28-28. This was just a knockdown, drag-out half that you're going to see here, especially this fourth quarter, as 10 seconds into the fourth quarter. Remember that Tommy Coates character that we just talked about? Well, here he comes again. 56 yards this time from Alec Ogden, and that would give Whitewater their first lead in quite some time at that point, 35-28, as he just alludes and gets into the end zone there. Fourth quarter, though, continues. 2:23 later, essentially, Ben Bonga heard from for the first time, he said. A 14-yard touchdown pass from Thorson, tie the game again. 35 apiece. Wheaton wouldn't go away. Tamir Thomas, though, says, please do go away. 7:21 left, 6-yard touchdown pass from Alec Ogden made it 42-35 Whitewater. Next play, you're going to see a Gallardi semifinalist in action as Egon Hine is going to watch this play. This is an amazing play when you look at it. You'll see the pass. You'll see what looks like a completion. No, it was deflected essentially as the player is going down, and Hine intercepts it. And that was just one play after the touchdown that we saw from Tamir Thomas. So one play later again, it's going to be Tamir Thomas getting the ball for a 20-yard touchdown run with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That made it 49-35 Whitewater. So they flipped the script entirely here on Wheaton, taking a 2-touchdown lead themselves. We'll go further into the fourth quarter, though. 3:49 left. Ben Bonga, a 10-yard touchdown pass from Thorson, trims the lead back to 7 points, 49-42. Wheaton would get one final chance in this game very late. 21 seconds left. They would take possession over, essentially. And you're going to see here first from the 1-yard line, Watch the completion, the hook and lateral attempt essentially here. It looks like it was right on the lateral line, so it looks like it was a good call by the refs not to call a forward pass to midfield. And with basically no time left here, 46-yard line, the pass Thorson does, trying for the end zone, comes up short of there, and it gets knocked away, incomplete, and Whitewater wins the game. 49-42, and they advance. Ben Thorson, 26 for 41, 402 yards, 5 passing touchdowns. Alec Ogden, 312 total yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown on the day. Let's go to the right side of the brackets, and this is the shot heard round the brackets. Alma at UMU, Mount Union. Second quarter, 2:01 left in that second quarter. First points of the game, DeAndre Parker, 2-yard touchdown run to make it 7-0 Mount Union. It would be 10-0 Mount at the halftime mark and the end of the third quarter. 3 seconds into the fourth quarter, Cole Thomas from Carter St. John, the 8-yard touchdown pass made it 10-7. Still Mount Union's lead, but it's really close late in the game here for Mount Union. Fourth quarter, 12:17 left. They respond to the Purple Raiders. Darnell Williams, a 1-yard touchdown run, made it 17-7 in favor of Mount Union. The teams would trade field goals over the next 7 minutes of this game, so essentially that 10-point lead stays in check there for Mount Union. 4:45 left though, fourth quarter. Nate Webb, a 76-yard touchdown pass. Where was the defense on that play? My goodness. And it's Alma now within 4 points. Mount Union would be forced to punt, and they would get one more chance. Ultimately, Alma getting this ball downfield, and look at this, past midfield with 50 seconds left, all the way down to the 22-yard line. Eventually, you're going to see they get the ball to the 2-yard line with very little time on the clock, down 3 points. They say, what field goal? They had no timeouts left at this point. 13 seconds left. Looks like he's going to run. No, jump pass, and completed for the touchdown. And Carter St. John finds Cole Thomas for that touchdown for the 24-20 lead. Well, Mount Union still would have one final chance here after the kickoff, and you're going to see the attempt here. Braxton Plunk and his team with basically 5 seconds left here. Final play in its entirety. The pass, and then the lateral fest in this play. And eventually it gets back to Plunk, you'll see in just a moment here, as he says, I'm open. And, you know, they would have to go about 90 yards at this point. It just wasn't going to happen. And amazingly, as the player gets pushed out of bounds, it is Mount Union losing, Alma winning. 24-20, DeAndre Parker, 31 rushes, 141 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. But Carter St. John, as his team streams onto the field, 20 for 33, 303 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Defense had 2 interceptions. Then Grove City at Cortland. 4 seconds into the second quarter, Zach Boyes gets a 14-yard touchdown run to take a 14-0 lead in this game. But Grove City would be heard from, and they just wouldn't go away in this game. Just before halftime, Ryan Leonard gets a 4-yard touchdown pass from Logan Pfeiffer to tie the game. 14 apiece at halftime. The teams would trade field goals in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, 8:27 left in it. It's Scott Frazier getting a 7-yard touchdown pass from Logan Pfeiffer, and Grove City took the lead 24-17. First lead of the game for Grove City. Then let's see what happens later, as it's Zach Boyes. This is a throw he wishes he could get back off the wrong foot, essentially, intercepted by Trevor Beck. Grove City looked like they may have been able to ice the game midway through the fourth quarter, but then it's Nico Flotti fumbling the ball at midfield, right back to Cortland. And eventually, Cortland would get a chance to tie this game, it looked like, as Jaden Alfano St. John gets a 1-yard touchdown run with 1:23 left. It's 24-23 at that point, and Cortland decides to go for 2. This is a heck of a play. Watch Zach Boyes roll to his right side, fake. He's running out of real estate, but he finds a player in basically triple coverage in the end zone. It's Amari Kendrick, good for a 25-24 lead. There would be one last chance for Grove City. They got the ball downfield to the 19-yard line. This 37-yard field goal attempt is going to sail wide left, and that would do it. Cortland holds on, wins the game 25-24. Logan Pfeiffer, 18 for 30, 197 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Zach Boyes, 313 total yards, 1 passing, 1 rushing touchdown in the game. Wow. Let's go to the bottom right bracket, and that's going to be Union at Johns Hopkins. We'll start with here. We'll start with Bay Harvey. How mobile is he in this play as he eludes Union, and here he goes, cutting, slicing, and everything else. Slicing, dicing, and Julianing his way to a 13-0 lead in the first quarter. 3:02 left there. But Union would respond. 12:48 left, second quarter. Isaiah Russell, a 7-yard touchdown pass from Donovan Piccatti, made it 13-7 as Union trailed the game. Then watch this. Cole De Silva forcing a fumble here from Will Ajay, and it's going to be taken by James Gillespie all the way down to the Johns Hopkins 7 in the second quarter. This is late in the second quarter. Next play, it's going to be Michael Fiore. The 7-yard touchdown pass just reaches over the goal line for it to make it a 16-14 Hopkins lead. But just 39 seconds later, 7 seconds left in the second quarter, Hopkins responds just before that halftime mark with a touchdown. It's E.J. Tellerico from Bay Harvey. 22-14 Hopkins leads. Fourth quarter we'll fast forward to. It's going to be a dose of Spencer Ugla. First, a 1-yard touchdown run, making it 29-17 in favor of Johns Hopkins. And Ugla, who you may have seen the piece on D3Football.com about him wearing number 3 in honor of Jim Margraf this season. Johns Hopkins, Spencer Ugla gets a 2-yard touchdown run, 39-17 at that point, and that would be the final score as Donovan Piccatti went 19 for 38, 169 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Spencer Ugla, 17 rushes, 68 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Finally, we're going to tell you about Ithaca at Randolph-Macon, but not much about it, I got to be honest with you folks, because there wasn't much excitement for Ithaca's side of the scoreboard. Second quarter, 4:24 left. Randolph-Macon's Brandon Woolridge gets a 53-yard touchdown pass from Drew Campanelli. 19-0 as they get the lights back on there for us. 19-0, the lead for Randolph-Macon. We'll go to the third quarter here as Randolph-Macon just pours it on. A 12-yard touchdown run by Jason Moore coming up here to make it 29-0 in favor of Randolph-Macon. And I have a hard time believing here. Ithaca couldn't get on the scoreboard, but you'll see what happens here. Fourth quarter, 11:21 left, and you're going to see David Wallace getting a 10-yard touchdown pass from Drew Campanelli. That was it. I mean, my goodness, 46-0. How often do you see a second-round shutout? But that's what happens here. Macon, with that, outgaining Ithaca 565 to 103 total yards. They had 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, and Drew Campanelli had 2 passing touchdowns. JB, that is going to be crunch time for round 2 of the playoffs in week 13 of the 2023 Division III college football season.
Wow, that was a lot to digest there. Nice job, Frank, as always, especially live without a net. But kind of perfect timing to wrap up with the Randolph-Macon win. And when you look at the tape, it's that offensive line for the Yellow Jackets that really seems to be taking control here in the playoffs. And we might have somebody coming up who's going to be facing that offensive line, and he's a pretty big part of the reason why the Blue Jays are the number 1 seed in their bracket, a number 1. They've been a top 10 team for a while now, and he's a Campbell Trophy, I think, semifinalist. He's a Ghilardi Trophy semifinalist. And if the Jays, even though I guess you'd say being the home team, they're the favorites, if they're going to make it to the semifinals, they're going to have to figure out a way to stop this big RMC offensive line and rushing attack, which really seems to have had its way through most of the opponents that they played this season. We'll see if the Jays can change it up.
Yeah, and go through this slate real quick, and we'll get our guest on after we go through at least this side of the bracket real quick.
Yeah, as we talked about at the top, Alma with the upset of the year, and basically ensures that there will be a first-time participant in Stag Bowl 50. So it's going to be either Alma, Cortland, Hopkins, or Randolph-Macon. So that's exciting. It's a little something different this year. We'll see, how it shakes out this weekend. The quarterfinal matchups are effectively number 8 versus number 7, number 11 versus number 13. When you look at the D3Football.com poll, we'll have a little more color on that, though, in our tail of the tape from a seedings perspective, at least from even though there's quote unquote no seedings, we think we sort of understand, why certain teams are hosting and others aren't, and we'll get into that in a little later. But yeah, I'm excited. I think one of the, when you look at just the numbers across the board, there isn't a lot separating these two teams, and they're not that far apart geographically. Maryland to Virginia, so it should be a good crowd there at Homewood Field, which has been on the national stage for obviously Hopkins lacrosse games on ESPN and all that type of stuff. But this weekend, it's all about football, and I like to joke around. Hopkins is really a football school, Frank, not lacrosse.
Yeah, you can tell that to the lacrosse folks. So listen, I really haven't told people, but I'm going to be, if I'm allowed, let's ask Luke himself. Luke, am I allowed to come back to Homewood and cover?
Where's your hat,
tomorrow,
Frank?
Or good point.
Hold on.
As I knock things down, don't worry about it. We'll that. And I'm throwing things around, but Luke Schuermann here is with us from the Blue Jays. As I get my hat on here, Luke, am I allowed to come back after all the antics that you had to go through at the Muhlenberg game?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure Mr. Spivak would be happy to see you again.
Well, I better not play complete homer here because we don't take rooting interest in any team here. We take rooting interest in players. And Luke, you've had some exciting things going on for you. Glardy semifinalist, two-time Campbell Trophy nominee, and everything else. Those personal attributes, those personal accolades and whatnot. I'm going to guess that you would do anything here to get to the Stag Bowl. If you could give those up and get to the Stag Bowl, that's what you would choose to do. Tell us about what this run has been like for you and this team this season, where not many people saw this possibility coming, where Johns Hopkins has as legit an opportunity as anybody right now to get to the Stag Bowl in Salem, Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. It's always been our goal to get here. Obviously, our number one goal is to win the conference. So we were able to take care of business there. And then everything we've been working for kind of comes down to this Saturday and then hopefully the Saturdays that follow.
Yeah, and speaking of winning that conference, and I know that somebody was, had a really good view of that. But what was it like for you, Luke, and your teammates who were on the sideline? I don't know, maybe you were in on that field goal attempt when that crazy play happened at Muhlenberg, and Will Leger picks it up and runs it in. I mean, you guys were looking at like maybe forcing overtime, but then all of a sudden, you guys won the game. And what was that whole experience like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in on the play. I was on the sideline, kneeling next to some of my teammates, just hoping that field goal would go through. When I saw the play, it almost like didn't feel real. It kind of still doesn't feel real. I remember like running down the sidelines, like jumping up and down with Coach Camara, and I was kind of like, is it for sure a touchdown? And I saw the signal, and then I just like I blacked out, kind of ran on the field and was just jumping up and down. I was so excited. It was awesome.
Yeah, we share a piece of history there in terms of the response from that play and everything else. Little did we know at that time. But here's the irony of all of it. Realistically, Muhlenberg doesn't get in because of that game. Who knows what would have happened if you guys lose that game? I mean, there was I think, slightly better chance because of the Ithaca result you guys had that you would have maybe gotten a Pool C bid and knocked somebody out of that, maybe Union, for instance. But, long story short, the margin for error, and you guys prove it in that game, is razor thin for Division III in the playoffs. And, for anybody out there that's saying, well, you can lose a game easily and you'll still be in it, not always. But now, having survived that regular season, and then you go into this WestCon game, and let's take that game first here as we go through this. They were really not backing down in that game in that first half. We were watching it in our Bracket Blitz show, and you guys just seemed, I don't know, it didn't, maybe not fully engaged in that game early, and then obviously you blow them away in the second half. But what was with the slow start ultimately for you guys to kind of get those engines revving the way that we would have expected in a Hopkins-WestCon type of game?
Yeah, I mean, I want to give a lot of credit to WestCon. They're a great team, and they had some serious playmakers. I think a lot of the slow start, at least from a defensive perspective, is attributed to just we had the ability to make some plays and we didn't quite make those plays, and so they were able to drive down the field, put some points on the board, and keep it close. And we kind of got that figured out in the second half, and that's when we were able to pull away.
Yeah, and then jumping ahead to the Union game, when I was kind of cracking the numbers here this week, it looks like you guys have done a good job generating turnovers, but it hasn't been, by a huge measure. But you forced 3 interceptions against the Dutchman Chargers, whatever we're calling them, this week. What was it? Do you think those turnovers were the result of sort of the defensive line pressure? Or was it just the secondary making some heads-up plays? Was it a combination of both? Because I think you guys have generated 17 turnovers for yourselves this year. That's not a big number, but you got +3, which was certainly beneficial in that big win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit it's a combination of everything. Scheme, play calling. Coach Wadika did a great job getting us in the right positions, getting us ready to go. And then just like I said, it's kind of the opposite of the WestCon games. We had a lot of guys just make big plays in big moments, and that's where those turnovers come. And so I think it was one of our best defensive performances of the year.
Okay, let's do it. In fact, we're gonna bring it in right now, Luke. We're gonna look at your tail of the tape here versus Randolph-Macon, because this is a really interesting game on paper. And I made my predictions for D3 football earlier. You'll hear what they are later in the show, obviously. But this slide has a lot to do with why I went the way I did. It's a very even set here, I would say, in certain aspects. Obviously, both 12-0. Both in the 500-yard range of offense per game. But I unfortunately have to ding you because you're giving up 100 more yards a game just about than Randolph-Macon is. And obviously 2 quality quarterbacks, more touchdowns for Bay Harvey, a total of 42 versus 25, a few more interceptions that he doesn't want us to talk about during his exam right now, then to distract him from passing that big test, I'm sure. But here's the whole thing. The turnover margin. And JB, I'm going to assume that you did double and triple checking when you put these numbers together, but +2 versus +17 this season, and the score margin goes Randolph-Macon's way here. So you guys host. In some categories, though, you might be the underdog in this game based on some of these numbers and everything else. Maybe the schedule is a little tougher for you guys, is what some people would respond. I get that. But, I mean, you look at this Randolph-Macon team. Tell me what we're in for in this game coming up.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really solid team all around. A great O-line, great quarterback, great receivers. In every aspect, they're a good team. They definitely want to establish the run, and so I think we have some good things ready to hopefully stop their rushing attack a little bit and get them off the field quick and get them into long third downs, make them have to drop back, which isn't necessarily what they want to do. So, yeah, I'm excited. It'll be a great challenge for us, and hopefully we can come out on top.
Is there a sort of a different way that as a defensive end that you prepare for a team that's coming in averaging 200 and almost 70 yards rushing? I mean, I know you've got probably like a 2 or 3 gap responsibility, but DEs are usually they're sacking quarterbacks, they're getting the tackles for loss, they're the big celebrations after big plays. I mean, since it does seem like the Yellow Jackets want to pound the ball, you guys really do need to kind of stop them on first and second to set you up for maybe some of those glory plays on third down.
Yeah, I mean, I think not too much changes. It's just doing my job as I always have to do. I think my mentality is a little bit different. Just have to be really stout in the run game, which most teams are a little more pass heavy than them. So it's really just about being stout in the run game, being able to play in some of those situations that I'm not usually in.
Okay, Luke. In the first time I really got to know you out there, I look at you and I'm like, here's this guy that is, defensive player from hell, basically. Nobody wants to see on the field. And there's this kid with a baby face, basically, that's at Johns Hopkins, smart as hell, and everything else. And it's just like, it's such a weird combination of things. I mean, what's next? Okay, tell us first off, what are you going to do after this season? I don't know if you have eligibility left for the whole COVID thing we went through, because not all schools post graduate versus senior differently. So take us through what's next for Luke Schuermann, regardless of what happens this season in the playoffs here. What's your story going to be, and how many billions are you going to make as a Hopkins grad?
Yeah, I mean, so I do have an extra year of eligibility left. I'm kind of weighing my options with that, and don't really have a set plan yet where exactly I want to take that. In terms of beyond that, I'm just kind of looking to the next year. Hopefully, get a good paying job in the future, though.
Nate Milne just threw a glass out there, through basically his mirror because now he heard that you might be coming back. And Muhlenberg's just thrilled to hear it, I'm sure. Just thrilled. JB, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and that's got to be a tough decision. I mean, we've talked to other Blue Jays players in the past, and they have had to weigh the decision of, and some of them actually have taken the job over the extra year of eligibility and are doing pretty well, from what I understand. So, good luck in that respect. I guess for the folks tuning in for the game on Saturday at noon, what can the fans expect? What's going to be like the Homewood experience? I mean, I know that in some of the broadcasts there's been some audio. Sometimes, Frank, do we need to put him up in the booth? I mean, other than the bar, of course, which apparently is a big hit, but other elements of what a Hopkins game day is like.
Yeah, Homewood Field obviously has a lot of history between lacrosse and all the other sports that have been played there more recently. I think it's going to be a great game day atmosphere. I think Randolph-Macon is going to travel really well with them being close geographically. And I think we're going to hopefully have a big crowd on the home side. So great game day atmosphere, a lot of fans, a lot of cheering. As Frank knows, great tailgates before and after. So, yeah, it'll be a great experience.
Well, remember last time I attended a quarterfinal game at Johns Hopkins was Johns Hopkins RPI. It was the last time that I encountered Coach Margraf. I remember Keith McMillan and Greg Thomas were with me, and we did the interviews because of the weather that day in the lacrosse building area there, or whatever, at the athletic center area downstairs by all the lacrosse trophies. Is I think we were going with that. And I just remember really appreciating, the common statements he made. I'm trying to do the math in my head here, Luke, to think about if you had any crossover with him in recruiting or what. Did you have any crossover with Coach Margraf?
No, I didn't. I never met him.
No, he was a fabulous, fabulous man. Coach Camara is somebody that Coach Margraf would be entirely proud of the way he's conducted himself as a head coach.
Yeah,
and he would be extremely, extremely proud of you and everything that you've done in your experience there at Hopkins. You've been an incredible player for a while here, and you deserve the accolades you're getting. We'll see where this goes. This is going to be a tough, tough game. I'm looking forward to it. See you there. But before we let you go, you get the opportunity here for shout-outs, any family, friends, teammates, etc. Luke Schuermann, the floor is yours.
I'll shout out my mom and dad. Love them. I'll see them tonight, so excited to see them. And then I'll shout out the D-line. Isaac Urquidy, Matthew Conkle, Zach Allagood, Andrew Goldberg. Those are all my boys. Those are my family. And I love them all. So excited to just keep this thing rolling and hopefully get a win on Saturday.
I remember correctly, Allagood had an interception versus WestCon that we featured here last week on Crunch Time. So he's a player. All you guys, I'm really impressed by what you guys did this season. I didn't see it coming. I predicted you guys would lose a game this season. Almost got to witness that happen based on that back and forth affair at Muhlenberg. We'll never forget that game. That was the game of the year. Yeah. Alma can say all they want, but in terms of just from start to finish, that was the game of the year. The Muhlenberg-Johns Hopkins game, as far as I'm concerned. Congratulations on success. Good luck the rest of the road here, and we will be in touch, I'm sure, at some point later to see what's next for Luke Schuermann officially. Thanks, Luke.
All right, thank you.
Luke Schuermann joining us.
Well, good news for you, Frank.
Hopkins.
Today looks like it's raining in Baltimore, but tomorrow it's going to be cloudy and clear with a high of 61. So maybe not. It's funny. There's like a pocket of rain today, rain on Sunday, but Saturday we might be able to get away with a pretty nice day football weather-wise. Although if Drew Campanelli is throwing the ball, he might have to throw the ball more than he's used to, because I'm not sure if Hopkins is going to let them. I mean, they're definitely going to challenge the run, and that's I think the only way that they can beat this Yellow Jackets team is really try to shut that run down and force Campanelli to go over the top. But he's a really talented quarterback too. When I did the tail of the tape, I couldn't believe he only had 24 passing touchdowns. He's definitely right up there as far as some of the best QBs that we've seen in a while. And I guess it's just one of those situations where he just hasn't had to throw the ball that much because they're mauling over everybody, with Nick Hale in the run game. So I'm really curious to see how this shakes out. Either result would not surprise me. A Hopkins win is certainly plausible, but so is a Randolph-Macon one. I think it's going to be better games of the weekend.
Let's take a look at the left side of the bracket now and the scores that we ran through in crunch time in a little more detail with you now and your takeaways from that side of the bracket as we prepare for our next guest, who I believe is in the queue. So we'll begin to get ready for that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, from the 30,000-foot view, I guess I sort of put my foot in my mouth because I went on the My Team media show saying that I thought the right side of the bracket would have the most competitive games, and the reality was it was kind of the left side for at least for a while. We thought Aurora might knock off La Crosse. I had some hope that the Trinity North Central game would be good when it was 14-14, but obviously that didn't pan out. Wheaton and Whitewater were trading back and forth, and the Thunder was such an interesting team this year, Frank, because I really did feel like the CCIW was a little bit down in general, but man, Wheaton brought it, and so that makes me wonder, is it, do they sort of play to the level of their competition? Is this Whitewater team maybe more susceptible than I thought? But Thorson had a fantastic game, 5 passing touchdowns. I mean, it was just a back and forth affair and really exciting. But Wartburg, to me, Frank, is actually, like you said during crunch time, they're starting to show me that they might be stronger than what we thought last year. We were kind of questioning because we saw a lot of close scores between them and some of the ARC teams. We thought, well, maybe the offense was taking a step back and the defense was, we weren't really sure what was going on there. But that was a pretty convincing win against a good Whitworth team that knocked off a top, 10 Linfield squad. And I know we can get into it later, but I know Coach Spencer had some, was saying that they were one of the teams that probably should have been in the tournament. Maybe someday, if we have 40 teams in the D3 championship, that'll come to pass. But when you look at the tail of the tape with Wartburg, Frank, they have the best rushing defense of any team in this Elite Eight. They are only allowing 35.3 rushing yards per game. Now they are allowing a lot of pass yards on one hand. I mean, but still 209 is pretty low by comparison when you look at across the board. But 35, I mean, basically teams can't run on these guys. And then you have a quarterback like McLaughlin who can run and throw the ball. He's gotten himself into a couple of situations where he's had to throw maybe a few more interceptions than he'd like. But overall, his defense has been locked down. And even though I may have actually tabbed his brother on the Gallardi semifinalist thing, which we can kind of maybe joke around. I mean, they kind of look a little bit alike, but the older Grover is actually. Yeah, I'm sure he's the more handsome of the two, right? We'll have to get his opinion on that.
Let me ask our friends at Wartburg to turn the camera on so we're ready to go here because we can't see him. There he is. Okay, so hold on here. Owen Grover, we're going to bring you in here. I'm going to get your microphone on. But before we do anything else, and I'm going to assume you may have caught wind of what happened with the whole thing, where JB, I was like, hey, JB, here's the Gallardi semifinalists. We got to get these ready to, post a great photo of everybody and everything. And then this happens. Essentially, okay, today you are looking a little bit like your brother. I'm not going to lie to you. It's pretty close here, what's going on. But clearly, you're slightly heavier than he is. He's a defensive back. You are not. You are a linebacker. And so, Owen, we apologize for that. Congratulations on being a semifinalist, nonetheless. And thanks for joining us. How you been since we saw you last?
Yeah, absolutely. Doing well. It's been an awesome season. Been a blast. But yeah, I think I got about 40 pounds on him. But we do look a lot alike. We get that a lot.
God bless your mom for having to deal with both of you boys. How many?
It's a lot of food.
I was just going to say, yeah. Woof. Gosh. Anyway, let's talk about football this season. Yeah, coming into the season, people had some very, very, very high aspirations and hopes for you guys based on the whole, semifinal situation. You guys were razor-thin margin away from taking down Mount Union last year. Alma ends up doing it this year. It's kind of amazing to me, how this whole thing plays out. But you guys come into this season, and I've said it on the show, and I'm not trying to be mean or, cruel about this whole thing, but it didn't seem to me you guys are playing up to necessarily your caliber offensively, but defensively you seem to be steady compared to last year. And then it seems like both the offense and the defense have really begun to improve throughout each week that I've been watching you guys. And we've shown plenty of clips here on our Crunch Time segments. Tell me about the season progression coming from last year where you kind of were lights out and people were like, where did they come from, to the expectations now and how the season played out.
Yeah, I think it was definitely different having those, last year kind of being the underdog of the end of the season. And then this year, having those expectations, but we like it. And we were like, we want everyone's best shot. And in the off season, that definitely motivated us a lot too, to, be like, we were this close, but we didn't end up where we want to end up. So we got to do something different. We got to do something to get better. And then kind of progressing throughout this season, not just, offensively and defensively, we needed to, started off the year not on a great foot defensively either. Things that we needed to do to get better. And, I think our offense has done a great job of that, of finding the things that click. And I think that was the same thing, though, in last year's season, too, where we had some progression that really needed to be made and we clicked at the right time. And we're kind of seeing that again this year, where our offense is definitely, and defensively, playing our best ball right now.
Where would you say, Owen? I was trying to pull up the Wartburg schedule here, and I think if I'm not mistaken, you guys had a real close call against, I think it was Co in about week 5 or 6, something like that. Yeah, it was a 27-21 win over Co. Then you guys kind of coasted the rest of the way. Although the Central game in late October was also a 10-point, maybe not a blowout kind of a situation. Where would you say was it those games against sort of like your number 1 and 2 contenders where you felt that season sort of clicked, where everything was kind of coming together, or are you guys just kind of still building towards that? Like we're not quite there yet, and we feel like we're peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a continuous build, and that's kind of the what we focus on of day by day and week by week, and making sure that we're using each game to get better, to make sure that we're at the right spot at the end of the year. But one thing that really stands out to me is in that second half of that Co game. So we went into halftime trailing in that game, but then we went into the locker room and we're like, we're going to get this done. We have complete trust in our offense to do what they need to do, and our defense is going to make a stand when we need to. We did that, and we battled together, and then from there on out, you could see the confidence really rise in what we were doing offensively, and our defense knowing that we can get the job done as well. So I think like from that point on, just the stepping stones that we made are what I noticed the most.
So we'll do the same thing we did with Luke Schuermann just a bit ago. Let's look at the tail of the tape for this week's playoff game coming up. As you've had what I would call a fairly easy run, not because the teams were easy, but you guys just seem to get your act together early and often in the games that you played so far in the playoffs. Whitworth tried early, but it didn't work for them. But let's look at this Whitewater game, because you clearly know what you're getting yourselves into here. This is not an easy team. Alec Ogden, back from injury, has been just impeccable out there as quarterback. But offensively, it's within 11 yards what the teams are averaging, it looks like. Defensively, you have about a 60-yard advantage in terms of not allowing 60 of the same yards that Whitewater's allowing. Alec Ogden, his numbers a little bit skewed because of the injury situation. Niall, obviously, with 35 total touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Alec with 32 and 4. Turnover margin, it's a tie, basically, +9, +8. And the difference really is point differential. You are averaging 33.2 points per game ahead of your opponents, whereas Whitewater's 19.6. I mean, on paper, this game seems really even, ultimately. That Alec Ogden factor, though, is, I think, a game changer in terms of what their momentum has been like since he's been back in the lineup. How do you account for a guy like that out there? How good is he from what you're seeing on tape?
Yeah, he's definitely super impressive, and he can do great things throwing the ball, but also what he can do on the ground, and his athleticism is what makes him super, super dangerous. And I think the thing that really stands out to me when looking at tail of the tapes is their ability to run the ball offensively, and then our defense's ability to stop the run, and that's something where something's got to give. One of those things has to change, and that's something that we've really put a lot of our focus in, and something that we really focus on doing well is stopping the run up front. And our front seven and our D line is going to have to do a great job of establishing that early and often.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to the punch, Owen, because the thing that jumped out to me when I put that together was the 265 average rushing yards for the Warhawks. I mean, that's like the third best out of all the final 8 teams. I mean, and it's literally like 1 or 2 yards away from Randolph-Macon's total. So you basically can say it's tied for second best. But you guys obviously, not really allowing teams to run on you, keeping the score to only basically allowing a field goal and a touchdown every game. I mean, if things go your way and you're able to kind of bottle up, Thomas has the Knights defense been able to take? Is it the sort of the takeaway situation where you're trying to force them into like passing the ball, maybe get some interceptions, or just put them in long third down situations, or it's harder to convert? Has that really been sort of your guys' forte?
Yeah, definitely. What we try to do is get teams off schedule. So win first down is something we talk about a lot. And then after that, our D-line does an incredible job of making quarterbacks uncomfortable. It's not always about getting sacks, but getting pressure in his face, and making that guy uncomfortable when he's throwing the ball. And then after that, we have some incredible playmakers on the back end that can go up and get balls. When quarterbacks aren't comfortable and not in the rhythm that they want to be in, then we have guys on the back end that have the outstanding ability to make plays there as well. So that's kind of what we tried to do.
I kind of wonder, JB, if they're going to be lacrosse or North Central fans this weekend as their game goes on simultaneous with that game. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to make them go on the record with that. But JB's got one more for you, I know. So let him go two straight here.
Yeah, and Frank alluded to it at the top, and I was trying to think of the right way to pull it together, but it took my brain and maybe a couple of cups of coffee to finally get going here. But what did you guys take away from the Mount Union game? Because that was a situation where you're kind of going up against the name brand, the class of Division III, the multinational championship winning kind of program. You've got another one of those kind of programs coming in to play you guys. It's nice that it's a home game, I'm sure. But does the fact that you basically were 3 minutes away from knocking off the Raiders tell you like, hey, you know what, we can do this to the Warhawks too. We're just as good as those guys, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that was a huge stepping stone for our program as a whole. And we showed not just everyone else but ourselves that we belong in this picture and we can play with these teams, and we can do it consistently is what we're trying to establish now, and that we continuously belong in these types of games. But it also showed us that we aren't where we want to be at. Our our end goal is to compete for a national championship. So there were things that we needed to do different and development that we need to make. We couldn't be complacent with the things that we did last year and be like, we were good enough to make the semifinals. We can try to do the same thing. But no, we had to, attack it with a different outlook and realize that, we needed to make changes in advance to be able to compete down the road like we want to do.
Well, it's interesting, though, because, Region 5 is kind of frowned upon out there in terms of the composition of it, and yet the defending national champion is in Region 5. This team that's trying to get to a second straight semifinal is in Region 5 in Wartburg here. And so it's really interesting watching how the balance of power in Division III National College Football is turning out, and that Wartburg is coming in here 2 straight years with a real possibility to go to be a Final Four team essentially in this whole thing. It's not a head scratcher so much as it's I think proof of there's a changing nature of Division III college football going on, and you guys are a part of it. You're showing us that any given Saturday, any given team can start to march up that whole stairway toward greatness in this thing. And I'm sure fifth years have been a big part of it, much like you are a fifth year from what it says on the roster. So let me ask you, what's next for you after football is done? We may have asked you this question last time we had you on the show without knowledge necessarily of what was definitively next. But now that this, I believe, is done for you, what's next for you?
Yeah, I think, once I finish up taking football snaps here, I'm going to be going to the University of Iowa Medical School. So hopefully become a physician someday is my goal.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Best of luck with that. That's incredible stuff right there. Yep. JB, you know what's next. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's been great to catch up with you, Owen. It was fun getting to know you last year, and we've been fans, ever since. Once again, my bad on the on swapping your brother out for the Gallardi thing. That was an honest mistake. But it was funny that some fans and I think some Wartburg Knights and people had a good chuckle about it. But we just want to give you for the second time a chance for shout outs to any friends, family, teammates, and wish you good luck this weekend against the Warhawks.
Yeah, I guess there's so many shout outs I could give. My family, my parents, my brothers, my fiance, all these people that have been so supportive of me over the last few years with Wartburg and allowed me to do the thing I love for so long. But also our coaching staff and these guys. So the other day I was actually watching. So I played against Whitewater in 2019 when I was a freshman, and I just threw on that film to watch a little bit and just like watching my development from that time to now. Like it was almost hard for me to watch myself as a freshman because I'm like, man, holy crap! Like what am I doing out there? And then seeing the development that I've had from our coaches and then just my teammates. I love these guys and they're what make it all worth it and the reason that I come out here. So, thank you to all those people. It's been a blast.
That's, kind of funny to think about, but the fact that you were getting enough playing time too back then is a testament to just how good of a player you are, even if you were maybe a little lankier back then or a little bit less skilled at that point in time. I did note, and I'm going to have to call you out the same way I did with Luke Lanin last week. Fiance, so what's the story? When's the wedding?
Yeah, congrats.
Getting married. Thank you. Yep, getting married this coming July. And, yep.
It's going to be a party out in Wartburg somewhere, I think, going on for that one. What's her first name? So we can say hi.
Bailey. Yep, Bailey. She's awesome.
Bailey. You got a good guy there, Bailey, for sure. I'm sure, as I always say, Owen will say he's got a good lady in Bailey. So congratulations on many different fronts here, Owen. And, we'll see where this goes. Maybe I will see you in Salem, Virginia in just a couple weeks. This is going to be an interesting ride. Obviously, you have some tough tasks left in your side of the bracket, so we'll see where it goes. Best of luck.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Owen Grover joining us there from Wartburg.
Yeah, thanks to Katie Joe, the sports information director at Wartburg, for helping us pull that together for the second year in a row. Yeah, man, this Wartburg team, man, it's interesting. I know we're getting close to picks, and I'm like, after talking to those two guys, I'm beginning to I'm sort of waffling here a little bit, Frank. I don't know what to do.
Well, hold on, because we have to look at a couple more things here before we do anything. Tail of the tape for the two games we have not hit yet without guests joining us today. North Central lacrosse. It seems to be the most lopsided of the games right now on paper, but that doesn't necessarily mean it plays out that way. Obviously, lacrosse with the loss to Hardin Simmons, but 585 to 469 in offensive yardage, and you look at the balance, it's more pass for lacrosse, more rush for North Central, which may surprise some people in some ways, but Hildebrand can do both, so don't count them out, passing or rushing the ball in any given play. Lacrosse giving up another 100 yards, basically, defensively. Luke Lanen, 57 touchdowns total, if my math is correct, with 1 interception this season. Hildebrand, 44 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. Yeah. The giveaway-takeaway scenario is a plus 23 versus a plus 8. The point differential is the largest in our history of doing this, I believe. Plus 50.1 for North Central. They were below average last week, believe it or not, by just a touchdown. And lacrosse is plus 18.5. Quick thoughts on that game before we go to last tail of the tape.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you think of this North Central offensive line, it's just insane that they're cranking out almost 600 yards of offense. They're rushing almost 340 yards a game. Their quarterback has almost 50 touchdowns. Well, has more than 50 touchdowns, right? I mean, it's just that everyone. If you want to know what the secret recipe to North Central, being so dominant, that's it right there. If you get a line. Now, I will say, in watching the game against Trinity, that they got away with a few holding penalties that weren't called. Let's just face it. I mean, but then again, the famous saying in football is that there's holding on every single play. So I mean, it's neither here nor there. They are that much faster and dominant than pretty much almost any defensive line that they'll face. The Eagles are in for a potentially long day unless they can figure out somehow to slow this O-line down. That's the bottom line.
You need Skeeta Jenkins out there to call holding from the sideline on his microphone, basically. Holding!
That was great.
Oh, Skeeta. Yeah, it's one of our best classic moments ever on this show. Okay, let's go to the last game here on the upper right side of the bracket. Actually, your tail of the tape changed my decision on who I was going to pick in this game. You probably know now where I'm going with it ultimately, but here we go. Offensively, Cortland and Alma look a little tied, 25 yards more to Cortland. Yep. Defensively, Alma gives up more yardage, 64. Carter St. John, 44 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Zach Boys, 39 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The turnover margin is the largest for any of the 8 remaining teams, Alma-wise. 27, plus 27 versus plus 11. And they have a slight edge in point differential, plus 30.5, excuse me, and a plus 28.7 for Cortland. But that turnover margin for Alma really surprised me there. And we've used that stat quite a bit over the years when we do tail the tape to tell us a little bit of the story of the season for teams. That tells you a lot of the story of the season for that team, I think.
Well, yeah, especially when you look at the fact that they're giving up almost 350 yards on defense. So it's not like they're holding teams to under 17 points a game. But this is kind of a bend don't break, and I'd have to do a quick scan, but I think that 340 whatever it is the largest amount of average yards. Well, I guess lacrosse is giving up 324 and a half, but when you think of the quarterbacks and some of the teams that they have to play in the WIAC, that might contribute to that. But still, it's just getting turnovers is a huge key in playoff games. And Zach Boys is super talented, but he also can be a little bit like Brett Favre, where he'll throw the ball into situations that he's trying to make plays, and I don't criticize him for doing that, but every once in a while, like against Grove City, we saw the Trevor Beck pickoff. I mean, that was a situation where he probably should have hung on to that one and didn't let it fly anyway. Those are going to be the kinds of plays that could turn that Alma game for Cortland. We'll see. These were my, speaking of Zach Boyes, I gave him my offensive MVP award this week because of the work that he did to get his team a really hard-fought win, particularly when you think about the, going for 2 there with only, 83 or like less than 90 seconds
83,
left in the game.
83.
And he gets, he finds his man in the end zone, a close call there. I mean, he was a big reason why they were able to pull that game off. A team with a quarterback that doesn't have some of the physical skills that Boyes has maybe would have lost that game. So he's a big reason why Cortland is where they are, but they're a pretty complete team. You look at the tail of the tape, very balanced attack, very balanced defense. They're creating some turnovers themselves, about 1 or so a game, and so Zach Boyes was my offensive MVP because of that 1-point win for his team in the playoffs. Michael Stack from UWL hit 8 PATs. He was perfect on that, which ended up being technically enough for the margin of victory. But he added things in other ways. Like I think he averaged over or close to 60 yards per kickoff. So put his defense in a good position from a field position perspective. So he's been a steady kicker. He was the guy that nailed that 50+ yarder that beat Whitewater back in the day, and I gave him an MVP for that. So when it comes down to this level of competition, he might be the difference between a win or a loss, and he was perfect in the last game. He might have to be perfect again this Saturday. We'll see. And then Odin Sofferdine is, I think, how you'll say this guy's name. He's a fifth-year linebacker for Alma, and he had 20 tackles in the win over Mount Union. This guy was everywhere. He wears number 0, but he is not a 0 by any stretch. He was the number 1 tackler in the playoffs last weekend. He was all over the field, and he's a big reason why the Scots were able to win that game against Mount Union, at least from a defensive side.
Okay, I didn't want to forget to do MVPs. Also don't want to forget, before we go to predictions, we want to talk a couple minutes here about what the news was out of the MASCAC this week, which was pretty unsettling, I have to be honest with you. An unsettling week in
disappointing.
My area here. Well, we lose College of St. Rose in Division 2 locally, and it's a good reminder that private schools don't have safety nets. Yep, College of St. Rose is shutting down at the end of this year, and that was yesterday's news here.
It's been a long run for them.
Yeah, and they made an appeal to the state, the city, and the county they're in Albany, and nothing doing, because they have no right to public money when it gets down to it, and so they voted to shut down. And again, it's a reminder to private Division 3 schools, these smaller schools that may have financial issues, that there is no major safety net available to them out there, and that's a little scary. So we wish our best to students that are affected in those situations, but it also reminds you that Birmingham Southern, having a little bit of ability to get some state help, it looks like, or at least local help, is lucky to still be around, and we'll see if they do continue. They're trying their darndest down there. But the MASCAC, 4 schools, all associate members. It's UMD, UMass Dartmouth, Western Connecticut, Castleton, and Plymouth State are being shown the door. And I got to be honest that that is unsettling in and of itself. When they started taking all those teams on, when they put Castleton in and Anna Maria and Dean, and we asked the question, hey, how are you going to schedule this now? Hey, this is, are you going to do divisions or whatever? And they didn't seem to have great answers for it. Something that you would think that you plan for ahead of time before you take on all these additional teams. And then you kind of sit there and you watch what happens this week and you say to yourself, was this planned? Was this the plan all along, to show teams the exit, and basically they wanted to fortify their numbers before they showed them the door? And from what I understand, at least source-wise, there was some talk of even showing them, or at least a couple of them, the door after this season, which really would be cruel under the circumstances. But they ended up taking the 4 associate members and saying goodbye. We'll see you one more year next year, which is Castleton's first year in the MASCAC and their final year in the MASCAC in football. Making absolutely no sense. And you begin to wonder, what was this? And for me, I got to say, this is a Division III conference in New England that needs to worry more about the effects on the kids that the students, men, the women in all the sports ultimately that these moves have than worrying about their longevity as a conference. Because at the end of the day, it's the players, the student athletes that need to matter first. And this move doesn't seem to have student athlete interest written all over it in the first and foremost category of why you would do something like this. This seems disingenuous. This seems really irritating to me because of what is at play. Will we see a new conference form as a result in football, the Little East Football Conference? I don't know. Here's what I tell Anna Maria, though. Anna Maria, you should be looking at your contract with the MASCAC, if there is one, and saying this is a material adverse change. Call up your friends at Norwich, who I think have some, thoughts about whether or not they want to stay in the new MAC and everything else that they've got going on in sports, and get yourself in Norwich into the Little East and have a new conference, the Little East Conference, and that's 6 teams and all core members at that point. That would be, and you could have your Pool A bid
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, but, listen, people are going to say, Frank, you're basically telling them to go steal back a new AQ. And my response to you would be, hey, guys, it was never the MASCAC's intent, it feels like. From what I'm hearing and seeing, it just doesn't feel like it was ever their intent to really have a 12-team or 13-team conference in football. This just feels like this was somehow a plan behind the scenes. I don't know, but something went very, very wrong in terms of the way things are supposed to work here and what they did, as far as I'm concerned. So, Anna Maria, you're kind of the key to the whole thing here, and I think you can exit probably, again, if you have a contract, read it, and then make your decisions. Because do you really want to be in a conference with the Massachusetts state schools? Do you really belong in that grouping? I've been to your campus. I don't think that's a true fit for Anna Maria, but that's going to be up to them ultimately to make that decision. What was your thought this week with the MASCAC move?
We have this thing every year where that we do this podcast to highlight the student athletes, right? That's always been our number one focus, or has been I'm up there, so I can say the kids, right? Because most of these are the same age as some of my children at this point. And it never fails to amaze me year after year how the adults, whether it's the NCAA, whether it's these conferences, they make these decisions that are based off of like these random, sometimes almost petty seeming little like land grabs that ultimately have adverse impact on the kids and their student athlete experience. It just doesn't, I don't get it. I don't know why this seems to be a common theme, but it is, and it's frustrating. To your point, I think you got to put the interests of these student athletes who only have this really finite, 4, maybe 4.5 year, if they're taking that extra year of eligibility, window to do this stuff, and try to make it as best of a situation for them as possible. These, kind of behind the, in the back alley and kicking teams out and doing this, and it's not what this level should be about. So I don't know, man. It's just disappointing.
It is indeed. So we'll keep you posted on that story to the schools that got kicked out. I feel like you were wronged in this one, just the way it happens.
Yeah.
And, we reached out to the MASCAC for comment, and besides saying that indeed the 4 teams will not be part of the conference in 2025, they had no other comment officially on the record. So that's all I'm going to be able to say with respect to their response. With respect to the teams that are kind of floating out there, I don't know where it goes for them. We hope that it works out okay, again, for the student athletes' sakes, that it goes okay, and that they get their opportunities at access in the playoffs and everything else. You got some Twitter activity, you told me. Region 5 discussion?
Yes. I don't know if you've seen that, but we got some comments from Stephen Lindmark, who had a couple of things here. He said, Frank, the Region 6 format started in 21, but if you look at 2019 to present, Region 5 has dominated in the tourney. Region 5 is 7-3, 4-3, 8-2, 4-2 versus the field, teams outside their own region. Region 6 is 3-4, 4-4, 1-4, 2-1. Region 2 is 4-2, 4-3, 3-5, 4-2, and then he adds, obviously NCC has helped Region 5 with 3 straight Stag Bowls. Region 2 is aided by many matchups against inferior Region 1 teams, but Region 5 is dominating Region 6 over that span. Let's see if they hold serve this weekend. Thanks to you and JB for all that you do. Interesting kind of a counter.
Yeah, well, 5-0 always helps from one team every year. I don't know how they're counting the Carnegie Mellon situation when Carnegie Mellon had the COVID situation a couple years ago. So,
true.
You know, my point though was most people assume Region 5 isn't the strong region, and yet all this stuff is coming from Region 5. Wartburg for 2 straight years, it seems like. NCC, Wheaton to a certain degree. So.
Yeah.
You have some top level teams in there that are carrying this conference's reputation, I think, way up. And it happens in 4 also because Mount Union's existence in 4 and you know, John Carroll in there and stuff. So I get it. And my point wasn't to say Region 5 is a horrible playoff performer. In fact, it was the opposite. It was to say they are dispelling the myth with their playoff performances out there. So thanks for the feedback, though.
Yep.
It's good to hear the stats ultimately. Anything else that we are getting crushed on in Twitter today?
No, I think that was it for now. I'm sure we'll light some other fires at some point. But yeah, we're running out of time here. It's we've got only 3 more weekends of football. We got 4 games this weekend. We'll have 2 games after that, and then 1 game on December 15th. So yeah, getting down the wire here. Look at this. 126, 125. It's like neck and neck down the stretch here. We'll see.
Yep.
I had a more comfortable lead last year. That was easy.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I'll give you a walkover next time.
Making me sweat this one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so again, we're not going lightning. We're going to give you some in-depth perspective on the games, going from the upper left, lower right, upper right, lower right. So here we go. First off, it's going to be North Central at La Crosse. You start this week.
Well, let's see. Going to my little trusty tail of the tape thing here. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the offensive numbers and even the defensive numbers here, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, obviously La Crosse has done a good job containing the run with 105. Yards per game, but you just have to think that North Central is going to get off to a fast start, and that'll the one X factor that the Eagles have going for them is Helterbrand can move the ball as well, if not better. He's kind of like Lennon in many ways. He might actually be a better runner than he is a passer. Even though obviously Luke Lennon's completion percentage and ratings and all that are top notch, probably the best in D3. But from a pure speed and athleticism perspective, these quarterbacks are very similar, and so that might buy them some time. But I just feel like it's, like I said before, the Cardinals' offensive line is just too dominant. The defense is creating a ton of turnovers, and they're cashing in on them. I mean, that's ultimately what the Tigers never had a chance when they fumbled right off the bat, and it was 14-0 like that, and we could see that this weekend too. We'll have to wait and see. I think it might be a little bit closer because of Helterbrand's ability to make things happen, but I still feel like North Central is going to win this game. Let's say 65-35.
Oof. I'll read you my quick hit because I might as well just stay consistent with what I write for there this week in D3 football. And I say, after watching the Trinity North Central game in person last weekend, it became clear to me that North Central is in a class of their own this season. That's no slight to UWL, who very much exceeded my expectations this season, but I can't see La Crosse winning this game unless North Central makes several unforced errors, which I don't anticipate here. I'm going to give North Central a lower score total, 40-20 over La Crosse. So there's that one. Let's see here if I can.
About a 10-point
navigate
difference
to-
between us. Yeah.
Yep, pretty much. Wartburg bracket, it's Whitewater at Wartburg, and I will start this one, and I will tell you my quick hit reads the following. I say 17-10 Wartburg over Whitewater, so I'm picking Wartburg here.
Whoa. Low scoring game.
Low scoring, you say, is the first line of my quick hit coming up here. Well, Whitewater has... Yeah, low scoring, you say. Well, Whitewater has held opponents to less than 20 points this season, while Wartburg has held opponents to just over 10. Wartburg's offense has to get a rhythm early in this game to control time possession and the tone of the game. Otherwise, his prediction might be very wrong. Yet Wartburg has been getting better and better each week. I'll put up the tail of the tape while you tell folks your thoughts on this game.
Well, and as you said before, I mean, when you look at the numbers, the offense is basically a wash. I mean, clearly Wartburg has a better defense from a statistical perspective, but then you also have to kind of weigh in the fact that when you go through the meat grinder, that's the Y-act, that could be a big reason why the Warhawks are giving up over 300 yards a game. You just can't help it when there's guys like Kobe Berghammer and Helterbrand and others that you have to play against week in and week out. Blaha, yeah, exactly. You can see that also in the bottom left with they're only winning games by less than three touchdowns, I guess technically if you 6 times 3, but still and so they're used to playing closer games. Wartburg's had only a few competitive matchups this year, and the number though that really jumped out to me, Frank, is in the top left: 60 playoff wins and 72 tries. And so I feel like it's one of those situations, and we've seen this before in the past, where these tried and true programs that have just been there and done it, when push comes to shove and it's down to the final couple of plays, they're just able to keep their cool because they've been there so many times, and they just know what they have to do. They're expected to execute. They don't get rattled, and I wonder if, with Wartburg's inexperience, now they probably should have won the game against Mount Union last year. They kind of let them score a little too soon. The Knights scored too soon. They left too much time on the clock for Mount Union to come back and win it. And so, it's funny when you said, "Oh, let's schedule somebody from Wartburg and from Johns Hopkins." I was like, "Oh, great! I think I'm going to probably pick against those guys." And then when I filled out my bracket, I had Wartburg losing to Whitewater in this game. But after talking to Owen, looking at the tail of the tape, I'm torn, and I think it could be a lower scoring, closer game. But I think maybe that playoff experience and the gauntlet that the Warhawks have run through will carry the day. And so I guess to maybe, since you picked Wartburg and I need to try to stay a jump ahead here, I'll go with Whitewater, which was my original pick. And let's see, based on the scores.
It's on. It's on. Here we go. We do have a differential here.
24-14.
24-14 in favor of Whitewater. I said 17-10. So both of us saying pretty low scoring games. Mine a little lower, but still overall low.
Yep.
Next one is a tough one. And I'll put a tail tape for you here as Cortland will be traveling to Alma. And, again, that plus 27 is what jumps out. What do you say here?
Yeah, and so this is interesting because typically in the grand scheme of things, you would think that an Empire 8 champion would be picked over a Michigan, champion, but especially, look at the difference in playoff wins and experience. Cortland has, obviously had, I know a lot of those wins were from, years gone by. But from the offensive perspective and even defensive, they're pretty close. Particularly when you looked at the kind of the rush yards allowed. St. John and Boys are very similar quarterbacks in many respects, and that turnover margin definitely jumps out to me, Frank, and it makes me a little nervous that that Boys could be rushed into making some plays. When I listened to the Carter St. John interview on Around the Nation with Pat Coleman, Carter talked about how it's windy up in Michigan, and so will there be some balls that sail on some of the Cortland receivers? But I think during one of our breaks, I did pull up the D3 quick hits, and it looks like everybody is picking Alma, and so there's kind of a part of me that's as an East guy, like I'm offended. I'm like, come on, Dragons, like let's. Why can't somebody from Region 2 make it to the Final Four? It's been a while, and the frustrating thing is that the Region 2 or East Region teams that get to this point typically lose for a variety of different reasons. Maybe this is the year where that changes. So, even though everyone's saying Alma's going to be the pick, what the hell? I'm going to go with Cortland. Come on, guys. Let's get the job done. Alfano St. John, pound the rock. Keep this Carter St. John kid on the sideline. Let's see if we can get a little Region 2 in the Final Four. What the hell? I'm going with Cortland. They won it by 1 point against Grove City. Let's say they'll hang on to win this one 27-26.
If Zach Boys is watching, DM me, Zach. Let me know what your thoughts on these picks are, because I know you're out there somewhere. You've seen the quick hit, so you know where I'm going with it. I was originally going to pick Cortland in this game until I looked at the turnover margin for the teams this season, the 27, as you said. Every other aspect of the tail tape in this game is similar, yet Cortland's plus 11 margin tells me that Alma might be able to secure more possessions and, as a result, points for the win. I'll pick Alma 35-24 as a result.
Good analysis.
So there is that. Finally, let's we'll get on the tape here, as it's going to be Randolph-Macon versus Johns Hopkins, game I will be attending. Both teams have great offenses, 470-plus yards per game for Johns Hopkins, 500 yards per game for Randolph-Macon. But Randolph-Macon's defense is the difference maker here for me. The turnover margin of plus 17 versus plus 2 for Hopkins, and the yardage allowed by Randolph-Macon, 221 versus 315. That tells me that Hopkins will struggle at times in this game to move the ball. I have Randolph-Macon winning this game 37-21.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think that their offensive and defensive lines are kind of putting them into a different category. And as good as Hopkins has been this year, that turnover differential. I mean, Harvey's going to have to make some plays, I think, to keep them in this game. Schuermann's going to need to make some plays on defense to keep Campanelli on his toes. I mean, I still can't believe that Drew has only thrown for 24 passing touchdowns. I mean, he's one of these QBs, and when you were kind of looking at what are all the similarities between these 8 teams, basically, aside from a great run defense, a running game on offense, you typically need a quarterback who can pass for over 30, 35 touchdowns a year, or a season rather, and Campanelli has that capability, but apparently he just hasn't needed to do it yet. So I think he could be the real catalyst in this game, and I agree with you, Frank. I think the Yellow Jackets are going to figure out a way to pull this one out on the road, and probably like a 35-28 type of game.
So, 2 games in the Eastern Time Zone, 2 games in the Central Time Zone on Saturday. Not much mystery on the fact that you could watch all 4 games in some format or another, but how are you going to watch it tomorrow?
I think probably with multiple devices, just get like the two screens going, and one over here, and then wait to see what happens at 1 o'clock. I mean, hopefully both of the noon games will live up to the hype, because they seem to be the more evenly matched teams to me. We'll see. I have a feeling that North Central could have a big runaway win against La Crosse, but time will tell there. The Wartburg Warhawks game is going to be interesting. I'll definitely keep an eye on that as much as I can for the first half. And fortunately, the way these games have been going, Frank, is that halftime for noon has typically been hitting right at 1 o'clock when the second games are kicking off. So we'll have a nice transition, I think. Assuming things kind of go as they normally do, so you can catch the whole first quarter of the 1 o'clock games to kind of get a sense of where those are headed before you jump back into the noon games for the second half. So that's probably what I'll do, and just be me and Ellie hanging out. Jen's going on a little trip this weekend, so I'll have to be on my best behavior, home alone, and we'll see what happens.
Ellie being the dog, for those wondering. I'm excited to see this game. I've not ever watched Randolph-Macon in person after all these years. So it's a rare air for them to be in a quarterfinal, as you've heard. And so here we go with that. In Hopkins, I have attended in a semifinal or a quarterfinal game, before in terms of the RPI game at Homewood. So look. People aren't going to give much credit to the right side of the bracket. But guess what? Somebody from the right side of the bracket, folks, is going to the Stag Bowl. Get over it, because it's going to be historic for that team. And, maybe they get run over and double monkey stomped in the Stag Bowl or something like that. But you know what? They're going to still have the achievement of getting to a Stag Bowl. And that is the type of thing that helps a team, a program, get new recruiting ability, helps them basically get that extra week of practice, gets a quality team that they get to face off against. That could be the start of something big for the team, regardless of whether they win or lose by 40 in the Stag Bowl. So it's an important thing, and it's something that we will embrace and usher through here. The left side's got some huge games still. The right side has some pretty damn good games too, in their own right, and we'll see who can get it to Stag Bowl.
Yeah, and when you look at it too, I mean, whoever wins the Hopkins, Randolph-Macon game, if they can make it to the Stag Bowl is a home game for those teams. I mean, let's face it, because Virginia, Randolph-Macon's just up the road. Baltimore is not that much further, so there could be a good turnout. I mean, who knows? Maybe Alma or Cortland will be the team that punches their ticket. We'll see. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are giving Cortland a chance. I'm taking a little bit of a flyer on them, so good luck, Dragons. But I think that one of these, especially if it's Randolph-Macon, that's kind of a different sort of situation for the Stag Bowl when you have actually like a home team from the same state. So we'll see how it happens.
Well, if it's anything like last week, we're going to have some excitement tomorrow. I don't know. I'm going a little chalky, I guess, in some of my picks here, but we'll see. At least one of those isn't a definitive chalk game. That Wartburg Whitewater game, I don't think it's chalk either way. I think that's really
a toss-up.
Home team. Yeah, home team might have the slight advantage because of the home team factor. And Alma versus Cortland might be some sort of a close game in terms of the stats too that we're seeing. So we'll see where this goes. Hopkins, Randolph-Macon. I think Macon comes in as the clear favorite numerically here, ironically, on the road. So they have North Central syndrome probably right now. In North Central on the road versus La Crosse. We're not going to even go there because we've gone there plenty. We'll see you on Twitter. We'll see you next week on the show as we get semifinals. Don't forget, Glardy finalists announced on December 7th. So that is coming up with the 20 semifinalists being whittled down at that time. See you, folks. Enjoy the quarterfinals.